Chapter 33, Malaria. Not only was Vic sick, but his computer didn't much like being in India either. Eventually we decided to send it back stateside. The OT was leaving Vrindavan and returning to Tawako, so he hand-carried it back. I had business in New York, so I arranged to take a side trip to Tawako to check out the beast. I met with someone at the temple named Mahamani and was able to restore it to life. Vic expressed his gratitude in a letter. However, he revealed that his health was taking a wrong turn. I got rid of some of my bodily troubles by visiting a nurse, being diagnosed as amoebic, and taking Flagyl for 4 days. Remember that stuff? The asthma is coming back, but less fiercely. Still, I am just plain drained. I think that 6 years of being hardcore has taken its toll. I need a McAfee session for my living computer. Email communications was reliable enough, even though messages would tend to bunch together, sometimes several in a day, sometimes a week with no messages. A week had passed without word from Vic. Not unusual, but considering that he said he was tired, I sent an inquiry as to the current state of his health. Another week went by without reply. I sent a more urgent request that also went unanswered. Been 2 weeks since I heard from Vic, I said to Linda as we ate our dinner. He's so bad at communicating. I wonder how he's doing. He's had so many issues this trip. I'm going to try to call him, I said. I don't like being passive and waiting helplessly. India is 12.5 hours ahead of California during daylight savings time, so that the time difference was essentially flipped day and night. I had the phone number for the ISKCON office in Vrindavan. It was 7 p.m. here, so 7:30 a.m. tomorrow there. I placed the call. The phone rang 10 times, and I hung up. I guess they're busy in the morning, I announced as if there were a room full of people waiting for the answer. Linda figured it out. Yeah, I remember that they do all their praying and chores in the morning. You should call back in their afternoon. Okay. Their afternoon is when I'm usually asleep. I set the alarm clock for 1 a.m. The alarm clock is faithful, but I'm not as pleased with it as I should be. I struggled to consciousness and placed the call. Ring, 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 ring. I put the phone back on the hook. Sleep is no longer my friend. I lay quietly and tried to think like a Krishna. When would I answer the phone? When the locals might want to have to call me. It must be later in the day, perhaps 4 p.m. I don't have the energy to reset the alarm for 4 a.m. and give up for the night. At breakfast, I report my progress to Linda. She's disappointed and thought I should have tried again. I vow to get up at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning and break on through. The alarm cooperates and I place the call. Surprise! A voice, but speaking Hindi. I ask, can you speak English? Yes, I can. How may I help you? The voice says in a British-styled accent. I can't avoid visualizing the speaker's lips moving too much too quickly, so that all the vowel sounds are emphasized and compressed, rising slightly in pitch. I would like to speak with Raja Kishore. He is visiting from America, I say slowly. Raja who? Raja Kishore. Now I'm afraid I'm mispronouncing Vic's Indian name. Never paid much attention to that detail before. Oh, I don't know anyone by that name here. Perhaps I should check, said the voice. Yes, please, I said. I could hear a clunk as the phone was placed on a hard surface. I listened to silence for minutes that seemed like an eternity to me. Finally, the voice returned. No one here knows that name, but Guru Maharaj will be here tomorrow. Perhaps you can call back. Okay, I said as I hung up. Too awake to sleep and too tired to get up. It's a long day ahead of me. At least I fall asleep quickly that night. The next morning, the alarm clock faithfully delivers its 4 a.m. message. I place the call and get the same voice on the phone. He seems to not remember a thing from yesterday, but does bring the Guru to the phone. Yes, Raja is here in India. He's at the Bhagavanta Swami International Gurukula. You can call him there, but they are closed now. Perhaps tomorrow earlier, he says in a slightly different British accent and voice. I thank him for his help and take the number. I trust virtually nothing Krishna say, so I call the school immediately. No answer. Okay, one for them. I reset the alarm clock for 3 a.m. and lie restlessly in bed for 2 hours until it's time to get up for another foggy day. Another morning, another shrieking message from my alarm clock, 3 a.m. this time. I call the school and fumble through a few people until finally one says he can fetch Raja. I'm about to return to sleep's embrace when a few noises on the phone bring me back to attention. Hello? It's Vic. Vic, is that you? It's Dad. Hi, Pops. He sounds more tired than I am. Are you okay? You don't sound right. Yeah, I'm okay, but I had malaria. What? Malaria? What do you mean had? I shake Linda until she wakes up when I tell her. It's Vic, he has malaria. She can't yet comprehend the meanings of the words she's heard. Don't scare Mom, I'm okay, really, Vic says into my ear. By now, Linda's awake enough to start screaming, "What? Malaria? No, it can't be true." Vic went on to explain that about 6 days ago he came down with a severe fever. He treated like all fevers he got in India by eating a lot of oranges, drinking lots of water, and resting. But after 2 days, it had gotten worse instead of better. In the fog of the fever, he'd wandered into a room where he didn't belong and had gotten locked in during the extreme heat of the day. Fortunately, some of the students from the Gurukula noticed him and set him free. They took him to the school nurse, who took him into town along with a number of the school children who needed more attention than the nurse could provide. From a sample of his blood, the lab technician proclaimed it had P. falciparum, sometimes called cerebral malaria, and that immediate treatment was urgent. Fortunately, the nurse was able to procure the needed medicines, administer them correctly, and Vic was in recovery. Of course, I didn't trust for a second that everything is okay now. After some discussion, I convinced Vic that he had to return immediately to America and be treated thoroughly and competently for any and all diseases he acquired on this trip. We agreed on a date and arranged a flight back via Delhi to Berlin to Chicago to San Diego. It was a grueling itinerary, but absolutely the fastest way back. Vic was coming home. He confirmed his journey in his last email from India. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'll be happy to get back to America and see you both again. You said that this was my most difficult trip to India for you. It was also mine. I'm going to rethink how I visit India in the future. I think spending long stretches of time here is the wrong way. I just do the same things I do in America, except the power always goes out, I get sick every second day, etc. Better stay in America and just come here for a short, fruitful span. I don't know about future emails. It's too stressful to figure it out everywhere. Maybe I'll be able to get email, maybe not, I can't say. But I'll call you from Germany to talk. I can't say for sure when because I have no idea of the time zones and all that stuff, but it should be around the end of the month. I love you both very much. I'd rather say it in person. Your son, Vic." Vic's Aunt Anita, also known as Auntie Bug, lives in Chicago, so I alerted her to the transit. As a part of her typical generous nature, she decided to visit him during the flight change. This is her description of that encounter. Vic had been out of touch for quite some time. We all had been pretty worried about him. We finally got the news that he had been very ill with malaria and almost died, but thankfully he was returning to California for R&R. When I learned that his flight would be stopping over in Chicago, I decided to take the opportunity to see him for myself and maybe offer some comfort, love, and welcome homeness. Either I got there early or his flight was late, but I remember having lots of time to sit and wait. I was at the gate for his outgoing flight to California. Thankfully, back in the day when you could get to the gate without having a ticket. I just kept walking down the long hall terminal waiting for him. Suddenly he was there, looking like a skeleton. He had on all his long, voluminous, flowing, peach-colored robes, the traditional face markings, and a shaved head. The beautiful, handsome face that I had loved forever was so gaunt. But wow, what a spectacular smile he had for me. I can still see it in my mind, though I do remember thinking that his gums looked really red like he needed some immediate dental intervention. I knew he'd be surprised, but his response was so overwhelming and heartwarming. I think he felt that we, secondary family, not Mom and Dad, didn't care about him anymore. We embraced and kissed and then sat down to talk. He told me about his horrific experience, about his disappointment with the higher-ups in the religion, about the deplorable conditions in India, poverty and sickness. I felt he was pretty disillusioned. Then I kind of let him know how upset we all were that we had not heard from him. His response was, "But Auntie Bug, I'm okay." I said, "Yes, you always knew where you were and what you were doing, but we had no idea or no way of finding out." I told him he has to stop being selfish about those things and think about how what he does affects those that love and worry about him. It seemed like a revelation to him that someone else might worry about him. Brainwashing by the Krishnas? Maybe just being 20-something? We talked about his return to home. I felt he was looking forward to the love and good old Italian caregiving, but I think he was also apprehensive about his reception and perception. In the blink of an eye, it was time for him to board his flight. After long hugs, he walked to the door. I waited until his plane took off, trying to figure out if I was sad or scared or mad or happy. I guess I was mostly thankful and relieved that he was back in the States and headed for home. When I spoke to Anita a few days later, she told me a different story about when Vic was trapped in the room. The door to the room was intentionally bolted shut from the outside. Vic had to yell out a window to the students nearby. Eventually, someone named Jiva heard his feeble cries for help and came to unlock the door to set him free. Seeing Vic's condition, he took him to the nurse. This was critical to Vic's recovery, since Vic believed the problem would just go away on its own. Eventually, we found out that a former student who hated Vic's guru was responsible for locking Vic in the room and harassing him during his illness. We waited at Lindbergh Field for flight AA 1296 on 25 March 96. The flight arrived only slightly late. We stood up and watched as it pulled up to the gate. As the passengers streamed from the mouth of the jet, we scrutinized each face looking for Vic. We weren't sure what he was wearing or what he would look like after malaria. The flow of passengers slowed and stopped. Had we missed him? Did we miss the flight? Finally, a solitary figure emerged from the passageway. It was Vic. He was moving slowly. He was wearing a sweatshirt over the customary robes with his hood up over his head, not for hiding but for warmth. Linda ran to him and embraced him. He smiled at me. His appearance was striking, gaunt and pale, a true personification of skin and bones. I took his case and hugged him. I kept my arm around him for physical support as we walked the hall to the baggage pickup. He felt very frail, and having just completed a 20-hour set of flights, he was exhausted. In the car ride home, we decided we couldn't wait for tomorrow to see the doctor. We went to the urgent care center in Rancho Bernardo. Our instincts were right. He weighed a mere 110 pounds. He hadn't weighed so little since he was a youngster. The immediate diagnosis was severe dehydration. After putting 2 liters of saline into his veins, he brightened up a bit. Urgent care had nothing else to do for him, and since we had an office visit scheduled for the next day, we went home. "What would you like to eat?" Linda asked, ready to prepare anything. She stocked the refrigerator and cupboards with all the things we knew him to still eat. "Mashed potatoes would be nice," he said softly. Linda was happy to feed him, but sad that this was the most he could take, soft and creamy. At least he felt good enough to eat something. He went to bed right after eating most of the potatoes and slept soundly till I woke him in the morning to go to the infectious disease center at Scripps Green Hospital in La Jolla. They have a tropical disease specialist there, so we thought that would get him the best treatment possible. The doctor administered blood tests and a battery of other exams. His conclusion was that Vic was indeed infected with malaria, but the crisis had long passed. Fortunately for Vic, the form of malaria that he survived was the P. falciparum type, which can be completely cured. If he was infected with P. malariae, he would have been plagued with symptoms for the rest of his life. The doctor explained that P. falciparum causes cerebral malaria, which is fatal if untreated. From Vic's descriptions, the doctor confirmed that he was on the edge of passing into the more serious stages, which would have progressed through delirium, pulmonary edema, renal failure, and eventually coma and death. Vic also was anemic because of the parasitic infection of his red blood cells, which had destroyed many of his red blood cells. For good measure, the doctor ordered a test of a stool sample to check for intestinal parasites. A few days later, we found out that he was colonized by a variety of parasites. This obviously affected his digestive system's proper functioning and was complicating his ability to regain lost weight. He went on a regimen of drugs and within the allotted 10 days was feeling much improved and started to gain weight again.